notice how U.S. Gold Corp is not hosting projects in states like California where it's tough to get things done, right? So something to think about. There is some bureaucratic red tape here that's not advantageous when you're in certain states or in the U.S. or certain provinces in Canada or what have you. So, but continuing, the market cap for U.S. Gold Corp is 128.61 million. Markets are about to open, but I believe, Luke, you folks are between $10 and $11 as of the market closing yesterday, and your 52-week range is approximately between $5 and $12 a share.
That's
So
correct.
excellent. So it's a very affordable stock, folks. If you're, with the way the market's resetting, if you're interested in gold and mining stocks, none of this is financial advice. It's just the opinion of one man and an interview with a chairman of said company. It's a very good company to establish your portfolio with, I think. If you're familiar with Kinross Gold or Barrick Gold, these are in the same family, in the same industry. However, U.S. Gold Corp is as you can see, they're investing in our country here in the United States, friends. That's a good thing. And that's why I show favoritism towards them. Their projects are U.S. based. And I've been talking to you in spaces, friends, about our new Secretary of the Interior, who's Doug Burgum, who I'm a big fan of. He was the former governor of North Dakota, a very, an ag state, natural resources state, and he is really monetizing the balance sheet of the United States of America in regards to fossil fuels, precious, mining, rare earths, etc. So it's a really good partnership, I think, Luke, that you have. Most Americans, familiar with who the Secretary of Defense is, who the Secretary of State is, but I think we all need to learn here in the U.S. that the Secretary of the Interior actually has a lot of discretion into what private mining companies can do in the United
And
States.
here's a really interesting factoid for you. So the previous Trump administration Secretary of the Interior was a gentleman by the name of Senator Ryan Zinke. Ryan Zinke went on to become a director of our company.
Oh, from Montana, the former Navy SEAL?
Correct. Yes. Now he's a congressman in Montana.
Excellent. So Ryan Zink, guys, if you remember, or Zinke, if you remember him from Trump 1.0, he was the Secretary of the Interior. Most Americans or most people think that the Secretary of Interior generally deals with just like our national parks and our Native American population.
Yep.
No, they deal with all this stuff, guys.
Land management, forestry, the work.
Absolutely. So you have a really good I think US Gold Corp and your competitors, Luke, have a really good advocate in President Trump's cabinet right now. Is you have North Dakota, very similar state to Wyoming, where your big project is, or your big project is upcoming.
Yep.
So he understands what you're up against and what the mining industry needs to do to be profitable for its shareholders and be in the good graces of the state. And
we were very fortunate, of course, because the state of Wyoming actually governs its own process. So in Nevada, Bureau of Land Management, predominantly, we would be dealing with feds. And I know that the federal agencies are now trying to open up the spigots and, get rid of the bottlenecks in terms of getting these projects up and running. But state of Wyoming, we dealt directly with the Department of Environmental Qualities, which is located in Cheyenne, Wyoming, just 20 miles from our project. So we got to talk to somebody, and if they had an issue, it was just as stringent a process as one would hope and expect. We don't want to be out there creating, an environmental catastrophe. We go through the rigors and the Department of Environmental Qualities. We got to talk to real people, boots on ground people, and it was a process, but we got.
That's great. That's outstanding. To all my friends in here, this is a very big piece of the mining industry. They have to be really compliant with federal regulations, because it's mining. It's a dangerous. If you're not, it's a dangerous project, right? A dangerous undertaking, and you have to be in compliance with the state, and that's why it's important that. Well, first of all, you have to be where the resources are. So, obviously, Wyoming has the potential for gold and copper resources extraction, but I've been trying to drive this point home to you, friends. This is why I'm bullish on U.S. Gold Corp is because they are in the state of Wyoming, which is one of the freest states for private business, probably in the country. I would say in the top five. And oh, by the way, it's evidently rich in precious metals. And so, Luke, it's not just gold; it's also copper. Those are your two main assets that you
Yes.
you folks do.
Yep, it's what we call a porphyry system. Um, Generally, those are tucked deep under the ocean, under the ocean. Excuse me, under the surface of the Earth, which we see a lot of them in Arizona. Generally, some of them in Nevada, all the way down through South America. These big porphyry systems, and we just happen to have one that's exposed at surface. So pretty fortunate. Mother Nature was pretty kind to us, and Mother Nature didn't put us in Colorado either, or else we would not be digging a hole today or tomorrow.
Yeah, Colorado, exactly. By contrast, while it's not too far from Wyoming, another natural resource rich state, impossible to do business in, I would imagine, Luke,
Yep,
right?
yep. Uh, and it's not to be rude or considered rude, but we call them NIMBY states. Not in my backyard. So they're places where they want all the niceties of what natural resources bring to you, which is everything you touch in your house to everything in your automobile, etc., etc. But they just don't want the hole in their backyard. So it's a choice, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's gonna be great for you guys working in Wyoming without having the without being shackled by the local bureaucracy. So it's one thing I'm learning too, just as somebody who's a casual investor in the really the gold space, and I'll get to that next, Luke. Just like gold in general. Um, it's a very dangerous, and you need to be very well trained to do these sort of mining explorations, whether it's gold, whatever. We hear a lot in international news, Luke, about rare earths and extracting them from countries, well, Western Africa for sure, but now Ukraine. And I think people who are not in the industry obviously don't understand how well trained your mining operation crews and your infrastructure, how honed everything has to be for the safety of the workers, number one, but also that you're doing the job in an efficient manner. Because I'm looking at U.S. Gold Corp's balance sheet, your financial information. At least as of April 30th, you guys are pretty liquid. You guys have the liquidity to do. Uh, you've got a lot of potential, I guess, Luke, is where I'm going. In particular, with that Wyoming project, which I think starts this month, right? Or it has started.
Well, we're just doing the final steps now, what we call a desktop transferal of our engineering over to what's called a bankable feasibility study. So by desktop, I mean we don't have to spend any more capital drilling, or we don't have to send anyone back to field. We held off on doing our final bankable feasibility study while we looked at some additional sort of optimization opportunities, like for recoveries. It gets pretty technical, but we're now at the final throes, and then we will move ahead into development production.
Outstanding. Well, I'll be looking into that for sure, and keeping an eye on you folks. It's so if you want to find out anything that we don't get to today, it's usgoldcorp.com is the website, friends. Again, their Nasdaq ticker is USAU, Uniform Sierra Alpha Uniform. Looks like as of close of market yesterday, you were looking at about $10.32 a share. So I'm not going to ask you to project your Q2, Q3 uh, stock price or anything like that, Luke. But let me just get to the concept of gold as an asset, like in general. I think what I'm noticing is somebody who started off with physical silver, like as a high school kid, just saving up to buy, 5-ounce silver bars and what have you. And the older I got, the more I saw the how safe an investment gold was, and that the elders in my family bought gold, physical gold, and also they invested in gold in mining companies and what have you. Um, I had a grandmother that bought gold at I think $500 an ounce in the 1980s or whenever it was $500 an ounce and did very well with it. So because she bought a lot of it at a time when the American economy was not so good. But I think what I'm seeing as somebody who just likes the global market and likes looking at commodities, Luke, whether it's crude oil or precious metals, I think that in particular in the United States, we don't have an appreciation for the fact that gold is a really good store of wealth because it's a 10, I mean, you're going back to the building of the pyramids. It's a 10,000 year
Well
old
beyond
asset.
5,000 years. Gold
Huh?
has been, yep. Gold was money for the last, for 5,000 years up until 1972 when the US currency became the global reserve currency, and they dropped the gold standard. So it's a 50-year experiment, and that's not done well in terms of what fiat currencies have proven themselves to do. Germany went through two entire fiat currencies post-war. So yeah, paper dollars, so good.
Yeah. So for those of you who need a refresher, you young folks in here, Nixon took us off the gold standard in the U.S. We didn't have gold-backed currency as of 1972. So basically, from the end of the Vietnam War to the current era, that's when we became petro-backed. Uh, and the U.S. still is the reserve currency of the world, but you'll find people like me and much smarter people like me that will have the critique, and it's a correct critique. I think that the U.S. dollar is not really sound money anymore, and we need to make it sound money again. I think gold's a big piece of that. But Luke, I think gold is. My opinion is get gold will be $4,000 an ounce by Christmas time, by Q4 of this year. That's my opinion. That's a pretty. I'd like to know your take on it, just a guesstimate on that, and why it took so long for people to understand that gold is a store of wealth and that yellow metal is money.
A great question, and I couldn't tell you why. I think a lot of people started to point to it and accuse it of being archaic, and I think it's a really big mistake. Look, in paper dollars, we're trusting your reserve bankers. These guys, they have no spigots. They just want to unleash capital because they want to get, these parties want to get elected, and all the different people have influence on it. And ultimately, people feel richer because their house went up, 100% over a 10-year period. But they're actually not realizing that they're just getting diluted down in terms of ownership of currency. So gold is a good way to keep people honest, which is ironic because everyone who touches gold seems to want to harness or steal that too. But yeah, it's a very interesting world. We've got to experience and witness 50 years of this science test, and I think it's just proving itself to be not a great way to want to run the system, is allowing other people to just print currency.
Exactly, which leads to inflation, which we know a lot about in the United States and in all of
Globally.
globally. Yeah, it's not just yeah, we're our harshest critics, but we have to Americans need to zoom out and see how much money is being printed all over the world, and not just since the pandemic. Uh, it's been a long time, but I think, Luke, that what we're seeing with gold, you're probably seeing a lot of activity that it's becoming a strategic asset for central banks because of, I don't think it's market
A
uncertainty what's going
strategic
on.
asset by way of central banks, absolutely, China and Russia in particular. But it's also now, finally, with your new administration, gold and copper are critical minerals, and they absolutely are critical minerals. Copper for transmission of electricity, obviously power, energy, and gold because it's a store of wealth. And it was pretty impressive to see your latest administration recognize that.
Yes, sir. My day job is I do the renovation of kitchens and bathrooms. So I actually buy a lot of copper pipe for domestic water. And I have to tell you, I'm a second generation renovator, and I remember my father in 1994. When NAFTA was signed, how he went from buying his copper for renovation jobs from places like Bloomington, Indiana, here in the U.S. in the Rust Belt, basically, and every stick of Type L and Type M copper he would buy at a supply house or from a wholesaler was made in Mexico. And he noticed the decline in the quality of it. The price was cheaper, but it wasn't being made here. And I think that's another situation we're in right now. People need to understand how important it is that we manufacture our own copper in the United States.
Manufacture everything. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. Because when you rely on outside sources, so again, that's another reason why I'm a big fan, and I'm a big fan of you folks because your projects are here in what we call red states here. I would put Nevada in the red state category, and even when they were a blue state politically, they were probably easy to do business in. So
Yeah.
that's a good thing. So so I see Luke, you and Terry are in traveling right now, but you're currently you were in Fort Lauderdale and now you're in Atlanta for the Natural Resource Stock Expo.
Correct.
So why don't you give us what
A
the
read
411 is on
on
that?
on the sentiment around. Look, there is a lot of work to be done. Again, 50 years of unraveling, gold as that store of wealth, the old archaic argument. We've got to re-educate people just the importance of it. And one of our largest shareholders actually is a crypto miner. He built three of the largest crypto mining companies on the planet. He's currently the chairman over at Hut 8. And he's insistent that if you own crypto, you should own gold. Just I don't know, re-educating just sounds a little bit too left wing for me, but just letting people know and understand what the opportunity is and why they should own a bit of gold is I think important, and that's our job and role.
Yeah, well, I would say it's a pretty positive sentiment. That's the read, Luke, all around. It's a pretty positive sentiment because
Absolutely, yes, it is. Yeah, yeah. No,
it,
people are starting to stand up and pay attention. Gold broaching $3,000. You mentioned is sort of a $4,000 target. I think we're all undershooting. I think that the amount of money supply that's gone on, especially in the last decade, needs to be soaked up by the price of gold. I mean, it's just that simple. So yeah, I think we've got these highs that we're seeing currently are not even getting close to where we'll end up.
yeah, I'm happy to hear that we're underscoring where we think gold can go. So for those of you that just aren't familiar with any of this, gold as of right now is about 3,200 an ounce. Uh, Most people like me buy it in bullion. I do like physical gold and silver as well. And silver, which people say often follows gold, but I kind of I pleasantly disagree. I think silver kind of does its own thing. It does often follow gold, but it's about 32.50 an ounce right now, USD, friends.
And
Uh,
silver has the beauty of being able to be also an industrial metal more so than gold is. So yeah, I'm a big fan of silver as well.
yeah, I should have asked you that from the top. I know your current career is taking you with gold and copper with U.S. Gold Corp. Am I missing anything? Are there any other commodities you guys?
I'm also the chairman of a Nevada-based silver company called Silver One. So US Gold Corp is where I focus most of my time, and when I say most, I mean greater than 95% of my time. But Silver One, I was a co-founder of as well, and I more kind of run special teams there. When I get a call from the CEO, he needs help either raising capital or we're acquiring another project, he'll give me a call, and I step up to the plate and help him out.
That's great. Yeah, it's that's really good to hear because and I'm happy you mentioned a few minutes ago that if you're a crypto or a Bitcoin enthusiast, that you should include gold as part of your portfolio. And I think that's really what I've noticed it a lot, Luke, post COVID, that people. I mean, there's a reason why President Trump, who I don't, and that's fine. I don't think he knows a whole lot about cryptocurrency, other than that people are putting a lot of money into it. And you're also seeing that now with gold and the precious metals market. I think that's a good thing. I think Americans are understanding that you need to have a store of wealth that is not tied to, your work's 401k that you have some asset manager for that you never look into, or a mutual fund or anything like that. I'm really pleasantly surprised, Luke, that people are starting to understand that there is a need to have a safe store of wealth. Some people think that's cryptocurrency. I think it's a little volatile, but to each their own. I think gold is a very well, while it might be expensive to get into, it's a very if you're risk adverse in investing, I think gold is a safe bet.
Well,
What
and
would you think?
expensive is a relative term, right? Um,
Yep.
it's not expensive right now relative to where it's going to be. Is basically my takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. I mean, I just read an article. I think it was from mining.com. Where they think by the end of Trump's term, so we're talking December of 2028, that gold could be 6,000 USD an ounce, which is essentially double what it is trading at today.
Yep. I don't blink an eye.
Oh, I hope you're right, Luke. I hope you're right. That would make me in particular very happy, and probably many other people listening and people that'll listen to the recording too. Uh, Absolutely. So, um, before we go to in particular what you're about to do in Wyoming, I just wanted to get back to the central banks briefly because President Trump's making these diplomatic trips. He was in Saudi Arabia, he's in Qatar today. Uh, what do you think? What central banks do you think have been most aggressive? I think you mentioned China earlier, but what are some other central banks around the world that are buying up gold in volume right now?
China and Russia, two predominant ones. I believe Thailand as well. It's the dumb countries, as I like to refer to them: New Zealand, England, Australia, Canada, dumping out their gold reserves. It all started in 2000. It was called the Brown Trade, by the way. Brown was the head of the Federal Reserve in England. Sorry, the Bank of England. And he was dumping their gold reserves, and he sold it down to $253 an ounce. And yeah, that was called the Brown Trade. And I think it was actually around 99, but or 2000, excuse me, in that realm. So look, these other countries were in there and just buying it. The Saudis are big believers in gold, obviously the Swiss. So, it's uh it's pretty interesting watching all these kind of, I want to call them World Economic Forum type based economies. Again, Canada, New Zealand, England, Australia. They don't understand the real value of wealth.
Is it true that Canada has no gold reserves at all?
Well, given our latest prime minister, I would imagine that's very much the case. He ran the Bank of England previously as a job, and I'm sure he does not have any affinity or care for gold.
Unbelievable. A country like Canada, which should be a natural resource exporting juggernaut, and they have no gold
Well, we should
reserves,
be we should
allegedly.
make Saudi Arabia look poor.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And yet they're, among well, I think the richest man in the world is in Saudi, I believe. Uh, so you're seeing, friends, what Luke is telling you, that there is a reaction to the market right now. The second biggest economy after the United States, China, they're buying gold. Russia, I think, has been buying gold since the start of their war with Ukraine. They've been hedging. So when you're seeing big countries like China, Russia, U.S. buy a lot of
Well,
gold.
and I left out India too. I apologize, but yeah,
Oh yeah,
the
yes.
BRICS, the BRICS.
Yep, India is another big player, another huge economy, and they're all. So, what does that tell you, friend? So, if the Chinese CCP or Modi in India or Putin in Russia is buying up gold at a pace that normally their countries do not do, in the best of times or the worst of times, what does that tell you? So, you tend to follow you tend to follow where these smart people are going. So that's why I think gold is going to have its time finally. Uh, I think a lot of people, Luke, over well, I'd say since the pandemic, a lot of people got in this decentralization craze and invested in. And I do hold Bitcoin and crypto, but I don't really put a lot of money into it, because I'm more interested in the market and in metals. But I'm all about being diverse. I think a lot of people got an obsession with being decentralized.
Yeah.
Decentralized, and they were not looking at the good deals because, friends, here's some feedback for you. You could buy a 1 ounce gold bar, 1 ounce gold bullion at your local Costco for, I think, I know I got one about a year and a half ago. It was like 1900 $1,900. You made if you sold it today, you've made more than 50% on a gold bar you bought, a 1 ounce bar you bought a year ago. So there was a window, I believe, in 2021 to 2024, where if you were buying physical gold or you were investing in gold ETFs or mining companies, you could be in a pretty sweet spot right now. What do you think about that, Luke?
Well, I mean, absolutely. But again, I don't think you want to have that approach to it that, hey, listen, it's got, it's up 50% or it's gotten out of hand. I think we're far from there. I mean, we did see that in the crypto world. Obviously, Bitcoin, I think, I looked at it at $9,000. I was like, it's getting pricey. And then it was 20,000. I'm like, oh, it's getting pricey. And now then it's 100,000. It's like, oh, that's getting pricey. Well, I think with gold, you've got to almost cleanse yourself of that approach to it. I think you again, you're using it to store wealth. So if you have cash in an account or if you have an excess of money, none of us probably have that problem, but if you've got this excess of capital and you want to store some of that wealth, then gold is absolutely the trade, I think, for those type of people. And the beauty of physical gold again is you're never going to forget your hex key or whatever, in terms of we don't want to get it, or if it's locked down on your computer. You can go bury gold, which it sounds a bit silly, really. I mean, bury it in your backyard. Who's going to do that? But it is it's a tangible metal. It's something you can own and at home. And the guy who comes and burgles your house probably won't even recognize it if you paint it. It's quite a funny thing.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's one thing. Yeah, Luke is bringing me back down to earth. It's a long term investment, and even though it's gone up in value, relatively speaking, over the last year and a half, it is a long term investment. So, and I talk plainly, friends. You know that if you're a risk adverse investor, again, not financial advice, just my opinion. Gold is always safe because you'll find even people that are casually in the market will invest in gold, physical or a company like Luke's here, U.S. Gold Corp, where Luke and Terry are at, where they're focusing on mining and they're focusing on a long term projection of their company and what a long term projection for their shareholders like yours truly, and maybe a few of you on here as well. Um, uh, I wouldn't call this a dip right now. I would just say, I look at US Gold Corp, look at similar companies, they would be perceived as undervalued. I believe, given the economic climate we're getting into here globally, where these things you hear every day, friends. You turn on the news, you hear about rare earths, you hear about cobalt, you hear about mining, you hear about gold and silver. Many of you for the first time because you just haven't focused on it, but it's a whole new frontier globally with precious metals and rare earths, I believe. and that could be a very, very different future, uh, for this country and others. Depending on how where this goes. But and Luke, I want you to spend some time and take a few minutes here, if you'd like, sir. Just kind of give your where you're at, where you've been, where
Yeah,
you're at, and where you're going with U.S. Gold Corp,
yeah,
please.
absolutely. No, it's been a bit of a whirlwind actually. We've managed in 4 short years to take a project all the way through our engineering phase and permitting, which was unfortunately a rather boring time if you're an investor of the company, because it's rife with risk relative to, is this thing going to be an economically viable opportunity? Is the project going to stack up against our peers? And then ultimately, can you permit the project? So those 4 years, again, for our investors and our long-standing investors who were with us through that, I thank them very much so. But now we are through that sort of de-risking phase, and we're just putting on the final kind of the buttons and such to go ahead and build this. And what we're ultimately trying to achieve is to build this thing on all in sort of a debt type laden approach. And look, debt's usually a swear word in most people's mouths, right? No one wants debt. Well, when you're like we are shareholder of our own company, we are aligned with our shareholders. We care about the stock. That's our kind of primary motive. I think we'd love to go ahead and take some of those fiat dollars out of the system by way of debt and produce copper and gold in the US, employing US people. It's very exciting times for us.
That's great. And what you mentioned, how you kind of went through your boring process of permitting. I was listening to an interview from one of your competitors. I believe they had a mine in British Columbia somewhere. I can't remember what podcast it was on, but he said the same thing. Basically, a lot of for you folks at U.S. Gold Corp and a lot of your competitors in North America, you were kind of at a point, I think, post pandemic where you were kind of like first and goal in the red zone, just kind of waiting for the red tape and the bureaucracy to get taken care of, and then it was off to the races. Basically,
Well,
this was
again,
around.
we were highly fortunate with the state of Wyoming because, our previous flagship asset that we still have in the portfolio, Keystone's down in Nevada. We kind of we collectively looked at each other and, within the company, and we're like, you know what, we'll just put this on hold until things get sorted out. I call it permitting purgatory. You just getting anything through the federal agencies in the US or Canada has been a disaster, and it's just gotten worse over the last decade. So, you know, we were very unique in the fact that Wyoming is still such a resource friendly state that we got to actually deal with people. Again, I don't want to lessen how important and how stringent the Department of Environmental Qualities out of Cheyenne are. I mean, they don't want us going in and creating havoc or creating some kind of you know future issue. It's environmental issue. Sorry, that is. It is a process, and we had to prove to them that we could get in there and do so efficiently, effectively, and cleanly. And ultimately, the irony of this project is it's not just a clean project; it's probably the greenest mining opportunity I've ever seen, and it just by chance and evolution of the process, the engineering process, we've come to learn that it's going to be a very, very clean mining operation.
That's great to hear. It's funny you mentioned that. I was listening back to Secretary Burgum really quick because what you said reminded me of this interview. He was on Fox Business, I think, a week or two ago, Luke, and Doug Burgum mentioned that when he took over the Department of Interior, even he didn't realize, and this guy was an 8-year governor in the state of North Dakota, so not foreign to the bureaucracy of Washington D.C. per se. He made the claim that the Biden administration nearly destroyed the mining industry in the United States, uh, just because of everybody was at a standstill and the federal government really wasn't paying attention to what you folks who are, private mining companies,
I
they
don't
weren't
think it's
set.
just the Biden administration's fault. I think
Yeah,
you could swap the US with any name: Canada, Australia, New Zealand, all these countries. Everyone just is in. I don't know. It's a bit of a I don't know. I find it a little bit hypocritical. Everyone wants the goods. Everyone wants these products, but no, again, the NIMBY term, but not in their backyard. So they're more than happy to let some third world nation where maybe they're not as stringent on environmental policy, where they don't care as much about you know their workers and their water sources. They're happy to buy. People are happy to buy goods from these other nations, but they don't want it in their own countries, and it's ludicrous because we are the most stringent. I can't really speak to the US as a first person because I'm not a US citizen. I'm a Canadian citizen. I'm a New Zealand citizen. But I can tell you very much firsthand from outside the US that the purview of these governmental agencies is ludicrous. It's nuts. And we touched on Canada. Like I said, it should be richer than Saudi Arabia, but no, we'll import it all from third world nation states, I guess, is kind of the view.
yeah, you're on the right track with the hypocrisy. Like, you mentioned the United States under previous administrations and the Commonwealth nations, they're fine with countries like Sierra Leone and the Congo and what have you being ransacked and, with no, they don't have anything like the EPA or OSHA
No,
in the Congo.
no.
That's what I'm trying to tell people. Like, so they're willing to gamble with the lives of thousands of African migrant workers that they don't know in the west coast of Africa to get these things. But when you have a
Hey, but
professional,
your iPhone's cheap. That's what's important, right? Yeah,
yeah,
$2,000.
yes. Yeah, yeah. Keep the iPhones at a cheap cost, so everybody ages 13 to 80 can have one in North America
Yeah.
and in Australia, New Zealand, etc. Globally, really. So that's one thing, friends. Like in this new economy, not just independent of mining. Look at the stuff that Lee Zeldin is doing with the EPA. When you're cutting useless regulations, not only are you making it more advantageous for a mining company or whatever, any sort of company to get things done and make money for their shareholders and have a good balance sheet. It's gonna bring more business to the country as we're seeing. I think there's $8 trillion
I
of
think you're
investment.
missing one important key here, though,
Yep.
and it's not that mining companies exist to make money for their shareholders. Mining companies exist because everything that you touch or feel on this planet is harvested by way of milling or mining. You're harvesting oil. Like unfortunately, that is how it is. If you don't want to if you want to go start fixing your old TVs and doing all the things that people used to do in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe we don't need as much materials. But the reality is the poor throughout Africa, throughout Asia, who are coming into the middle class, they want stuff, and stuff means we have to produce that stuff. Everything we have, everything tangible, is milled, mined, harvested, right? So it's an unnecessary, or sorry, a necessary evil. I want to say, not entirely, but I mean it's just part of what we have to do as a planet, as a collective. We produce goods and we consume those goods. So mining is a necessary.
Absolutely. Yeah, great point on that. Everything in our house, friends, is folks, you walk down to your basements and the white PVC drainage pipes in your plumbing, that's oil. Everything is oil. Everything in your house is oil. Not the raw material oil, obviously, but processed down. Everything is
Yep.
is metal. Open up your iPhone. How many metals are in an iPhone when you dissect it? Could you think?
Yeah.
You know, Luke's 100% correct. So, Luke, how are we doing on time? Because I know you folks are at a conference, you and Terry. So it's 9:45 Eastern by my count. How are we doing on time?
All well and good. At some point, obviously, finite time is a little bit finite for us all, but happy to keep chatting away right now.
No problem. If anybody has a question or two about precious metals, the mining industry, or I'd like to keep this gold focused. Feel free. You can DM me now as I continue to talk to Luke and Terry here, and we'll make sure the question is going to be appropriate, right? So I don't often do that, but these folks have limited time, and I'd like to keep the conversation flowing in the time we have left. Right? Fair enough. So just DM me. I'll take a peek. Uh, Terry, is there anything you want to add to this conversation? Anything about your speculation or what you folks are up to at U.S. Gold Corp?
Not necessarily, just always have been a big fan of gold. It's clearly my first love. And I think US Gold Corp right now is a absolutely brilliant investment given the stage we're at in the mining cycle of it all, and heading towards development. But yeah, I'll leave it up to you and Luke to carry on the conversation.
Awesome. This is an exciting time if you're in this industry, Luke and Terry. Right? When, like I said, you're at first and goal, right? You're on the 1 yard line, and you folks are just ready to do what you do, and et cetera. Yeah. Go ahead, Luke.
No, I apologize. I probably forgot to press mute there and coughed in the background. But yeah, look, um, like I said, we've gone through the hard yards. We've done the permitting, we've done the engineering, the boring part of the process. Now I think we're going to have a chance here to really shine and show that not just are we going ahead and going to develop this deposit, but ultimately we're going to do so in a very non-dilutive fashion. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, but you know, last week we announced that we had some warrant exercises, so we now have about 14 million shares outstanding, which is quite stingy relative to our peer group. Why? Because we don't like to dilute ourselves, and we don't like to dilute our shareholders. So, yeah, I think we've got a lot of upside in this company.
Outstanding. And friend, thank you for that, Luke. Luke mentioned the term warrant, and in a financial instrument, it's got a little bit different connotation to a legal warrant. So I'll give you the definition. So, for mining companies in the mining industry, basically, a warrant is like a financial tool that's used to give the holder the right, but not the obligation to buy shares of the company's stock at a certain price. I think they call it an exercise price
Yep.
in a set period of time. Do I have that right, Luke?
You nailed it. And it's kind of when we had to raise capital through through that permitting and engineering phase, you offer it as an incentive where they have the right to purchase a share, slightly above their entry point through a financing, so a private placement. Um, Now that we're kind of through all the quagmire of, like I said, the process, we're ready to go.
Outstanding. Thank you for that. That's good clarification. Guys, take notes. This is a treat here, not just for me, but for all of you. You're getting a chairman of a very well respect in this industry. And I do know it, even though I've not worked in it, I've invested in it, and I've been interested in it since I was an economics student in university. Uh, this is a treat here. So you're learning from a true capitalist in this space, which is mining, which is huge, as Luke's been explaining to you. So I got a couple of questions, Luke, that people sent me via DM, via text message, because they can't take a microphone. So I'll
Yep.
dictate it to you. Some of these are very broad and general. You may have gone over it, but these people may have come in subsequent to the space starting. So if you just indulge us for a second here, but um, we have Jody's asking, can you ask Luke if he expects any hurdles regarding the feasibility, and when do you expect to release basically with the Wyoming, the
Yep.
Cheyenne project.
Yep.
Just briefly, do you
Yep.
expect any hurdles now at this stage?
No, short answer, no, we do not expect any hurdles. Doesn't mean there isn't ever, something around the corner, but no, it's a pretty simple operation here. I mean, our location 20 miles outside of Cheyenne, we're just right off the I-80 corridor, the I-80 Interstate 80, which runs from Chicago out to San Francisco. Following that is the Pacific Rail line. So getting equipment and getting people in is just it's tremendously easy. It's not like we're trying to build something in the high Andes of Peru or something like that. You're just dealing with all these issues. We have a very, very bare bones kind of mining operation. We're not using any cyanide or anything like that on site. We don't need to. We're actually producing what's called a concentrate. So we crush and grind the rock. We then put it through what's called a flotation cell, a reagent, which is basically like a laundry detergent, believe it or not. Captures the metals, it gets dried out and shipped off site as basically a powder concentrate. So you can't get a more simple kind of mining operation, really. Just to our south is Martin Marietta Materials. They're about 2.5 miles to our south, and they are by way of open pit, just harvesting simple rock and selling it off into the Colorado Front Range because, again, you can't dig a hole in Colorado, as I like to joke. So we do not see long answer, I know, but do not see anything really stacking up against us. It is still an inflationary environment. I think our forecast in February was around $277 million to build the mine out. I absolutely expect that number to be higher. But we based all of that off $2,100 gold and $4.10 copper. I mean, none of us could see or imagine, gold hitting $3,400 at the time. So look, the economics of the project just get better and better. But yeah, costs are going to go up. That's just we all know it. We all go to the grocery store. We all see what's happening. Things are getting more expensive.
Yeah, we've had a bit of a reprieve here in the U.S., but I know that's not the case in Australia, New Zealand, or Canada. I
No,
know
well,
that
because
much.
we got a
So
carbon tax, right, as well. Because there's amazing amounts of carbon that we produce out of Canada, apparently. Meanwhile, in China, they're building, you know, 200 coal power plants a year or something. So, yeah, the irony of it.
yeah, China and India is absolutely yeah, EPA is not a thing in mainland China, folks,
No.
or the middle of India. Big massive, and you're right about from a practicality standpoint, logistics standpoint. I'm looking at a map of the Keystone project, Luke, and the topography doesn't look that challenging. Just like you said,
Well,
compared to the
Keystone,
Andes.
Keystone is a tremendous project. But what we're going to do with that, we're going to spin that out of the company at some point. So if you're a share, which I know you're a shareholder of the company, uh, you know, as of record date, whenever that is, I think we will spin that project out and we'll let that project kind of dilute itself accordingly through the exploration process. I don't think we need to be diluting ourselves as shareholders at the CK level, at the Copper King level. But wow, what a wonderful opportunity Keystone is. It sits right across from the Cortez complex, which is now Barrick Gold's largest endowment, almost 60 million ounces of gold. So yeah, we definitely, we collectively, us investors in this company, want to see that project see the light of day at some point.
Outstanding. Thank you. And great there. And Janet's asking, this is again kind of a macro general question on your industry. Her question is how does US Gold Corp compete with other countries, in terms of payment? And we talked about Africa a little while. You probably don't compete with them because you're regulated and you want the best of the best, and the
Yep.
best of the best, they cost money. So Janet, I could probably answer that for Luke in that they don't compete price wise with third world countries, but you offer a more professional environment, and you're doing stuff at scale. You've got three major projects going on, or on the precipice of going on, whereas these other countries they just mine to live, basically. Like I said, Sierra Leone, Congo, etc. Right?
Yeah,
So
but
there's
also to Janet's question, we're actually surprisingly low cost base for our production. So we we produce what we call it a gold equivalent. We're producing gold and copper. About 70% of the economics of our deposit is gold, and about 30% of the economics is copper, which means 70% of the value of ultimately the metals that we harvest is in the gold, and 30% of it is in the copper. But we measure it in what we call gold equivalents, just for simplicity sakes, for our own basic minds, not just to understand. We just value everything by an ounce of gold, even though we're counting our copper in gold ounces, right? So it cost us $937 an ounce based on our February pre-feasibility study. $930 an ounce to get it out of the ground. I mean, you compare that to the big mining companies; they're all $1,300, $1,600, $1,800 an ounce. So we actually are competitive with kind of third world nation mines from the cost of production standpoint. It's quite a remarkable asset.
Yeah, that's I know, like, again, I know a little bit about this, friends. That's under $1,000 an ounce that for extraction and overhead is, I mean, that's damn good in the mining industry. So that's about, like I said, $600 less than I thought, Luke. So I'm learning stuff today too. So you guys, you do it well, and you also do it efficient and cost effective. So remember, friends, the less money a corporation spends in extracting an asset, etc., um, the more advantageous it is for the investor too. If I may, right? So
Yes.
great question on that, Janet. So another follow up, and we'll give. I get time for two more questions with Luke, friends, because I want him and Terry to enjoy their time at the conference in Atlanta. I'm sure it's probably 90 degrees Fahrenheit there, so I hope it's got good air conditioning. I'm from the Northeast, uh, Luke, so when I go south of Virginia, I melt. So I might have some Eskimo blood. I don't know.
Yeah.
But so follow up from Jody, who asked that good question earlier. She would like to know, what challenges is U.S. Gold Corp facing in its ability to transition from exploration to production? And she gives just by 2027, 2028. I think that's maybe just an arbitrary number she's thrown out there
Yeah.
regarding the Wyoming project, the Cheyenne
So
project.
what we did, Jody, is we in 2000 sorry, 2020, is we pivoted from exploration to pre-development. And how we did so was bringing in George B, who BEE is his surname, George B, as our CEO. And so George, there is not probably a more qualified person on the planet to hang their name or put their name towards building a gold mine. So George actually put Goldstrike into production for Barrick back in the late 80s. Goldstrike became Barrick's flagship, ultimately led to Barrick being the behemoth company that they are today. He then shifted gears and moved down to South America and built some of Barrick's largest gold production facilities down in South America. So we have a proven mine builder on our team. So the transition through engineering, ultimately where we're headed now, which is into development production, is made so much easier when you've got a guy who knows how to dig a hole and extract gold from it. So yeah, no, it's you're in very good hands with our company.
Yeah, so for those of you, thank you for that, Luke. For those of you that don't know, Barrick Gold, I would say, Luke, you probably agree with me. They're kind of the standard bearer for your industry, right? Um,
Yes.
yeah, and that's where
Yeah.
George comes from. Your president and CEO, George B.E.E. So you folks you should know his name if you're interested in this stuff. I was familiar with Barrick Gold and U.S. Gold Corp as they're in the same space basically. So that's good. You've got a guy that's um, been in the industry a very, very long time globally. So
Yep.
that's good news for you guys, Luke. It looks I think your team in place I think is great. I like I said, I'm harping on the states because being an American, I know what states are in your industry are good to do business in. Uh, Wyoming, Nevada are the big ones, and just easier to get things done. I think it's going to be an enjoyable rest of 2025 for you guys, uh,
Yeah.
for sure. And I would say the next your if I could, I'll just close with this before I let you and Terry go. Luke, is where do you see U.S. Gold Corp? Similar question. Where do you see U.S. Gold Corp? I would say by let's say Q3 2026 approximately. Not in terms of stock price or anything like that, but where do you or liquidity? Where do you see your projects here in the United States? Where do you think they're going to be
Oh,
at?
we'll be well into development at that juncture. From my perspective, from my opinion, we'll be well into development and looking forward to production, probably later that year or early 27 would be that would be my forecast.
Outstanding. That's great. So things are looking up. This is where the term bullish comes in, my friends. You guys hear that all the time if you watch Fox Business or whatever, any investor thing on YouTube. I'm pretty bullish on U.S. Gold Corp, just based on where their trajectory is at and where they're doing their mining. That's really I think the mining industry, much like the real estate industry, Luke, it's location, location, location.
Absolutely, that's George B's quip. He
Oh,
always uses that because people can't understand how our cost of production is so low. Well, our employees are going home at night. They go. We don't have to build man camps. We don't have to back up storage equipment because we've got sorry, a storage for backup equipment. Excuse me, because we've got a highway and a rail line. Spitting distance from the project. Location, location, location. Absolutely.
yep, location, because just like where you're building there's a reason why, President Trump, for example, bought like the Turnberry golf course in Scotland, or he built Trump Tower in the early 1980s because of where it was. And you guys well, first of all, you're in Wyoming because of what's in the ground and what your industry is, but also, like you said, you're not uh, starting projects in the middle of Los Angeles or the middle of Vancouver. I mean, you're in
No.
an open air state that's easy to get to for transit for your workers and your staff, like you said, and any contractors you have. I'm sure you guys do some third party contracting for equipment and what
Oh,
have you.
predominantly, that's the other thing. Yeah, mining is we contract mining. Other people's equipment, they give us a flat rate. It's contractually bound. They can take care of their own equipment. They can take care of maintenance, etc. So yeah.
Outstanding. That's great. So friends, I hope you enjoyed this. I know I did. I was looking forward to this, and I want to thank Terry, affectionately known as Lioness here. She's been awesome in helping coordinate this, and everybody, thanks for the questions. I'm sorry I couldn't take more. I know there's 5 or 6 more. Maybe down the road we could do this again, Luke. When you're
More than happy to do so. Yep.
not traveling. And you can see Luke also has a few great interviews on investor channels on YouTube. So if you just put in the search bar Luke Norman, U.S. Gold Corp, there's 5 or 6 recent interviews that he's done with people in the financial space that I think you guys will enjoy. I've watched a few of them, and mostly because I didn't want to ask the same questions to Luke, but also because I just wanted to get a feel for your interview style. So I hope you did the majority of talking and I didn't talk too much, and I hope you enjoyed this, sir.
No, absolutely did, and happy to do so again.
Outstanding. And Terry, thank you. I appreciate you doing this and hooking me up with Luke's information here.
My pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks for listening to my spaces here and there. I'm glad they don't put you to sleep generally. Thank you very much. You folks have a great day in downtown Atlanta there at the conference. And I'll just give some more information out on the company before I let you folks go. So it's US Gold Corp, and their NASDAQ symbol is USAU, Uniform Sierra Alpha Uniform. They are a gold exploration and development company. Right now, 3 projects here in the United States. You could find them at 1807 Capitol Ave in Cheyenne, Wyoming, right? Also, usgoldcorp.com if you're interested. They are traded on, if you have a Robinhood app and you're interested, you could buy stocks there or whatever. You full disclosure, none of this was financial advice, and I am a shareholder in US Gold Corp. So there's my cards are on the table. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I appreciate Luke and Terry's time today. And thanks for everybody for listening. Luke, is there anything you want to say before I let you folks go about your day?
No, I just appreciate again the opportunity to say hi. Also appreciate the fact that you're a shareholder, and yeah, I'm a shareholder too, and I'm out there working every day.
Outstanding. We appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time and your expertise. And I learned a lot. I know everybody in here did. And Luke, we'll speak again. You guys have a great day. So you know how to exit the space. Terry, you can get you guys could pop out if you'd like. I'm just gonna say a few words. Feel free to stick around. Just to my listeners in here. So thank you guys. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
You bet. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Cheers. And I will take you guys off a listener. All right, friends. So that was nice. I like that. I appreciate everybody's patience too. I learned a lot. Like I said, I hope you guys did, because I do spend a little bit of time with this. I'm going to keep the space open a little bit longer. If you want to just talk about, maybe I could answer some questions if you didn't have time to grab a mic and talk to Luke, or you didn't have time to DM. I know a few of you in here sent me some questions that I didn't ask Luke. He was actually had a little more time than I thought, but I thought they were a little bit repetitive. So I just so you know, I did read everybody's. There's like 5 or 6 people who I didn't I didn't respond to that I was going to ask them the question. But as you heard, a few other people in here kind of had the same idea. So yeah, just so you folks know, I do buy this stock. How it came about was Terry's an associate in the company, and she and I follow some investor stuff. So anyway, she came into one of my political spaces a few weeks ago, and I was talking about the economy and the tariffs, and one thing led to another, and she DM'd me and told me who she was and who her boss was, and that they were going to be traveling here in the U.S. This week, and that they'd be on my time zone here on the East Coast, and they've been doing some interviews and some podcasts. So US Gold Corp is a really good company, in my opinion, friends, to invest in, just because they're doing some pretty heavy duty projects here in the United States. And what do I talk about all the time is the economy, and strengthening the U.S. economy. And these are not mining projects, like I said, in Africa or South America. This is right here in the good old U.S. of A. So it's really hard for me not to get behind, even as a gold investor and a silver investor, not to get behind an outfit that's doing work in a state like Wyoming, which is going to provide a lot of jobs for people. Nevada, and what do we know about those states? How are they aligned politically? But not only that, like I said several times, they're just easy to do business in. And that's a big part of it when you're in the mining industry. Like I tried to and Luke agreed, it's location, location. Yes, you have to be in states and countries and territories where you can get gold and copper and mine, and it's profitable. There's a reason you're there. But also there's the business component, guys. You want to be in a state, country, province, territory, whatever, landmass where you can not get tied up with red tape and bureaucracy. And that's really what I think President Trump's trying to do, and he's succeeding. Is he's trying to make it easy for private industry, whether it's mining, whether it's real estate, you hear so much about AI and chip manufacturing. You want to work in a country where, of course, you make money, but beyond that, you are able to provide a good experience for your employees so they stay there, for your shareholders, and for the long-term profitability of your country, right? So, company, and in this case, our country gets the benefit of it. So, yeah, really impressive guy, Luke Norman, and the president and CEO George B is a veteran of that business. So that's why I do my homework, guys, before I invest, like you all do, and you should. So if anybody wants to grab a mic, and I'll keep the space open a little longer. If you want to talk the economy or anything like that. If not, so this is kind of a standalone space. I'm going to end it if nobody wants to chat. Just so I could send this to Luke and Lioness, and they have that if they want to reference it later. All right. So he grabbed Tim, he grabbed the mic. All right, Tim, what's going on? Did you listen to the chat?
I caught some of it, yeah, for sure. And I just wanted to take a minute to grab a mic and say thank you. I've been a long time gold and silver investor, multi-decades now, and I've been grateful that I got into it. And yeah, I'm familiar with Luke and his projects, as I am a good, faithful little puppy dog that follows a fellow named Keith Newmeyer around, along with Eric Sprott. And I watch what they're doing, and then I kind of move along in their shadow, so to speak, which has been pretty good generally for me. But yeah, that's how I'm aware of him. And I am an investor in Silver One. I'm not an investor in Gold Corp, but I am an investor in Silver One. So I was interesting to hear him mention them as well. I think that, yeah, metals is a good, not just insurance, but it's also a good way to weather the storm moving forward. And I'm not saying that cryptos are necessarily a bad asset, but they're never something that I've truly been able to wrap my head around when it comes to intrinsic value and how they store energy. Whereas gold and silver has always made sense to me. So yeah, I'm not against having both in their portfolio, but for me personally, I think that as we're going into these, these times moving forward here, having a little bit of gold and silver in the portfolio is probably a really good calculated insurance policy for everybody.
I agree, Tim. Thanks for the compliment too. And yeah, so Luke, who was the gentleman I was speaking to, he's also the CEO of Silver One. So he's got a lot of balls up in the air. I think he's doing a great job because when you're a transnational CEO and you're trying to do business, and I mean, you heard he's a New Zealander, how tough it is for him to do business in his home country in New Zealand, or right across the way in Australia, or where he lives now in Canada. It's just tough. And that's not good. That has a trickle down effect, guys. I mean, let's talk about macroeconomics for a second. Why has President Trump spent so much time just in the 100 days he's been back in office trying to get American businesses like Apple back manufacturing stuff in the United States, or foreign businesses like Nvidia from Taiwan to commit to opening factories here in the U.S., because that will help our economy. And he knows the reason why they all went to China or they all went to India is because the United States they were not doing a good job with commerce retention. And it goes beyond Biden. This goes back to the 1990s with it started with NAFTA, with manufacturing here. NAFTA was set up to benefit the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, and it had the opposite effect in every way. It led to basically where we are now with mass trade imbalances, et cetera, and a whole bunch of other stuff that I talk about every day. I just won't talk about it today because you guys know where I stand on all that. But mining.com, guys, if you're at all interested in this stuff, is a website that I use often, right? Or I read often. So this is from like Monday. They have an article here, and they have a Gallup. Gallup polling is kind of it's like the ABC, NBC of national polling. You might not pay attention to it because with politics it's skewed, but I think for something like this, it's a good indicator. So Gallup ran a poll where nearly a quarter of U.S. adults now say gold is the best long-term investment, and that's a sharp increase from last year because in 2023 it was only 16%. And only real estate right now is ranking hot, which I agree with. By the way, real estate, mailbox income, and gold. Those are your two best. I don't even get to stocks till 3 or 4, right? Outside of U.S. Gold Corp and some others that I trade a lot or improve my position on. So that's interesting, guys. Like I said, I as somebody who honestly, guys, since I've been in high school, I've been buying silver coins or whatever, and then eventually when I got older and I could afford it, physical gold. I've never seen a time. I was at a coin shop yesterday, buying physical gold, right? Uh, this store I've gone into, I've never been in more than 15 or 20 minutes. There were 7 or 8 people in line. There's a lot of people buying and selling gold. I've never seen, as somebody who spends time in these stores several times a year, regardless of the economy, I've never seen that, guys. And I'm in southern New Hampshire. It's not exactly, the Diamond District in Manhattan. And for me to be waiting in line to buy gold, like I said, my local Costco ran out of those. They've been doing it about a year now. Those Swiss 1 ounce gold bars. Like I went to my local Costco uh, over the weekend just to buy a couple of gold bars, like 3 of them if they had them. I think they only let you buy one though at a time. So, but the member price is good. Uh, so anyway, I went in there and they said they can't get them for a week. And this is Costco. When have you ever gone into Costco, guys? Whether you needed to buy a TV, whether you needed to buy toilet paper or a turkey for Thanksgiving. When have you ever gone into Costco and they ran out of anything? So I didn't want to wait 3 days or a week, so that's why I went to this coin shop instead to get the gold bar. And he only had one by the time I got there, and I had him get 3 more for me. These are 1 ounce bars, but even he couldn't get them till Friday. So a couple days or whatever, he'll hold them for me. He'll call me if I don't get him in a few days. He'll just sell them. But that's why I bought the one, so he would if I can't make it Friday afternoon, I could maybe go in Monday and get them from him. But that's what we call a squeeze, guys. Whether you buy gold or silver, um, and really you expect that with silver a little bit because it's much cheaper. But when that's happening with gold, guys, I mean, you got to put your radar, you got to put your take your blinders off and realize what's happening now. Yes, you can't go into Walmart and buy your weekly stuff with gold bars. I understand that. I get it. But having it in your house in a safe, secure area, you can liquidate it at any time. You could bring it to a coin shop and you'll get hopefully close to what they call spot price. It's usually at 1% off at most, and you can get cash for or if you have gold bars and you have to make a tuition payment for your kids' college or whatever, you can do that. It's not easily transferable money, but it's worth money, guys. It's not. Some people would say it's a better investment than the stock market. Yeah, Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to weigh in too briefly, and just a lot of people that I've talked to in the last 10 years were doing the old, well, Tim, it's too expensive. I can't afford to buy gold, or, silver's just going nowhere. I don't really want to buy silver and stuff. And I've always explained to them that, it's not a matter of whether or not you want to buy insurance. It's just a matter of whether or not you think you need it, right? And when it comes to gold, we have had a big run up. So I just like to remind everybody, you can buy gold by the gram. You can buy literally sheets of gold now with little individual gram pieces inside of it, that you can cut off and give away as gifts and stuff. So there's more ways to get into gold than just buying a full ounce at a time now. There's lots of different fractions and stuff that you can get into as well. The one thing I would recommend though to everybody that's getting into gold or silver is stay away from any sort of numismatic type coins or products like that unless you really understand what you're getting into, because they are marked up dramatically due to other things that are involved in their worth. And if you don't know what you're getting into, you could find yourself way overpaying for a coin or a fractional amount just due to the fact that you don't really understand what you're buying. So anyway, I'll land it there and go back to the listener, but really enjoyed the space this morning, Gadsden. Thanks.
You're welcome, Tim. Thank you. And so I got a DM while you were talking. Somebody was asking, when a 1 ounce gold bar is not like what you see in the movies. Obviously, it's much smaller because it's only an ounce, right? So people are asking me like what brand. I mean, like when I've bought them. And by the way, the member price, if you're a Costco member in the US, is 1 ounce gold bar, which is again mine ran out of. I have to wait, but it's Rand Refinery, so it's officially stamped and all that. It's 33.39 and 99 cents an ounce. Like I said, about a year ago, so around I think it was around Christmas of 2023, a little bit more than a year ago, I bought one for I want to say it was like 1980 I paid. And it was one of those Swiss ones. So yeah, I mean I made over $1,000 on that one. That's not bad for something that was sitting in my my office safe, right? I didn't even think about it, right? I was so focused on the election and politics, I wasn't really buying gold or silver at all. I was just, and not really paying attention to my portfolio. It's a bit different when you're, being self-employed. I do my own retirement, so you kind of have to stay on top of it. I can't like outsource it to other people, right? So and that's one thing. Like a few people ask me, I know a lot of you that have like corporate jobs and all that. You might have like a fidelity plan you have the right as an employee of that company because they're taking, well, they're not taking it. You agreed to put a certain percentage away for your retirement, their profit sharing. You probably get emails or letters from like I said, Fidelity or Wells Fargo or whoever your human resources department has your 401k in. You should scrutinize, guys, what you're investing in, because I remember when I was working in the corporate world, I remember when I was doing my onboarding, right? And they would say, "Do you want a moderate risk plan with your?" I think we had Fidelity at this company, if I remember. That's why I keep bringing it up. Moderate risk and income building portfolio. And I was like, I don't know. I'm 23 years old, man. Whatever you think. And I didn't think about it for 7 or 8 years, right? The entire time I was with that company. Don't do that. Don't be like me. I had an excuse. I was 23 and didn't know anything. If I realize you have a busy life, but like take a day, contact your HR person that handles the investment of your company, see what you agreed to, see what they're investing in. They might be tech stock heavy, or they might be uh, natural resource heavy. I mean, that's, friendly advice there. Don't put your money to work for you, right? Don't just leave it off to somebody else, to its own devices. You could be leaving some money on the table, which could affect your retirement and or whatever, affect your children, grandchildren, whatever. So something to think about, friends. Yeah, so that's the price. So these 1 ounce gold bars, that's the reason I'm talking about this at Costco is because I think for most people, this is the easiest way to get into it. If you want to get physical gold is, at Costco. And that's a new thing. Like, I don't remember them 5 and 6 years ago selling gold bars, but I mean, that's pretty telling, guys. I'm in a small state, and my Costco is probably not as packed as a Costco that's like in San Diego or Orlando. And the fact that I walked in there and they didn't have any, and that particular area is not very affluent. That's saying a lot. People are waking up to the value of gold. And even if none of this makes sense to you, I kind of spoke about it with Luke earlier. Think about it. If you bought a 1 ounce gold bar a year ago or a year and a bit ago, you would have made 50% on it. You can't get that in any form of crypto, really, unless you count the stuff that's less than a penny, like, Dogecoin or whatever, that which nobody really does. Nobody really does, right? So you might get that with a few stocks, you might get that with other things, but I think that's something people can wrap their head around. In 1 year, something where you didn't have to log into a trading account or talk to any stockbroker, you had a little 1 ounce gold bar that went up 50% in value. Did your house didn't go up 50% in value even in this market in a year, right? So hey, now do some math here. Say you had 20 ounces of gold, there you go, right? You could figure it out. A couple other things, guys. Again, this is from mining.com. Historically, gold stocks tend to lag the metal itself until higher prices are deemed sustainable. However, institutional capital tends to wait for the quote unquote all clear sign. That often means retail investors can front run the rotation. And what that means is if gold prices stay elevated or go higher, as I expect they do personally, I believe we'll see renewed flows into the mining space. Meanwhile, we've seen investors increasingly favor physical backed gold ETFs and streaming/royalty companies as lower risk ways to gain exposure. That's understandable. These vehicles offer gold's upside with fewer operational headaches. But let's not forget that miners still dig the stuff out of the ground. When margins improve, they can offer significant torque. Okay. So, like, even though US Gold Corp, it seems like they have a very efficient and cost effective way of mining, whether it's gold or copper. And that's their intention to do in Wyoming, Nevada, and Idaho, the projects they have going on here currently. There is some overhead involved. That's why, and I think Tim talked about it when he had a mic, that, you know, the getting involved with a gold mining company or a gold ETF or or physical gold, it might seem heavy, it might seem front loaded, but I think it's a time right now where people are what they call bullish on gold, right? Meaning that people are seeing that this is a good store of wealth, it's a good investment, it's a good place to put my money. You work hard, you want to invest smartly so you can enjoy your retirement, right? That's my plan, you know. I mean, I don't take as many vacations as I want to, and there's a reason for that because a lot of people a lot of people need me to work. And I'm pretty much in a position now at 46 years old that I can get what I want, and it's really tough to walk away from that. And I'm not, because this is, while I'm still upright, I need to make money, right? Like all of us do. Something to think about. Let me check your DMs. All right. So Arthur, I see you're in here. I know you missed Luke, but if you want to grab a mic, this is a recorded space. You can hear what he said. I thought he was great, but Arthur, you had a question about the housing prices in ounces of gold. So grab a mic if you want to talk about that. If not, we can pick it up another day. I'll probably do another space tomorrow or Friday, but this was, I thought, a good. I hope you guys liked it too, because I don't often interview people, so hopefully I did all right. Because Arthur's connecting here. I got a problem where I talk too damn much, and the gift of gab is the gift that I have. But sometimes you got to learn to dial it back, and I hope that was the case. I think Luke held his own though. He's dealt with a lot worse cats than me in the boardroom and all that. Arthur, what's up, man? Sorry you missed it. I did mention you. I figured you'd have expertise in a question, and you can listen to his comments. I had him for an hour, a little bit more than an hour. But what anything you want to add to this discussion?
Yeah, sorry I missed it. I had a meeting that I went over went over time, so I wasn't able to make it. Did you talk or did you talk at all about? Obviously, I'm sure you would have discussed like how it's an inflation hedge. Um,
Yes.
yeah. Okay. So I'm up, as you know, I'm up in Canada, and real quick, like our housing market, especially centered around our major cities, is one of the most expensive housing markets in the world. So if you look at places like Toronto and Vancouver and even Montreal, the average price of a home in relation to average income is one metric that's often used. And so if you look at a place like Vancouver now, Vancouver average home prices are 14 times average incomes. Toronto, not much better. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 times average income. So I just reposted it. So if you go to my timeline, you can see a brief thread that I put together looking at the price of an ounce of gold in Canadian funds um, uh, in February 2015, and then the price of gold in Canadian funds February of this year. So in Canadian funds, gold in February of 25 was over $4,000 an ounce, and that's because our dollar trades at roughly 72 cents to the US dollar and has depreciated over that period of time, over that 10-year period. So gold back in 15 traded at $1,500 an ounce, Canadian funds. So while gold is up almost threefold over that 10-year period, incomes, right? The average income in real terms, right? In inflation terms, is basically flat. So what we've seen, and there's many reasons for it: fiscal policies, easy money, lots of money coming from places like China, Hong Kong, and the Middle East. But if you looked at the average price of a home in Vancouver in 15, it would have cost you 412 ounces of gold. Okay. If you look at that home price today at 14 times average income, it would only cost you 294 ounces of gold. So despite the fact that housing has ramped and is trending well above long-term averages, if gold was a substantial amount of your portfolio, or however you choose to make it a part of your portfolio, if you allocate a fixed percentage, as I do, and invest on a regular basis, not try to guess when it's too high or low enough. I just invest. I look to invest and keep metals as somewhere between 10 to 20% of my portfolio on a regular basis. And so anyway, I thought I would share that, and just if we think in terms of what goods and services are priced in an ounce of gold, it really tells the story of how gold protects your purchasing power over many years. So thanks for the mic.
I agree, Arthur. Yeah, absolutely. You articulated it much better and quicker than I did with Luke, but you're 100% correct. Like I gave a story. Like my grandmother was a big real estate investor, huge. I mean, she in the 1970s when nobody in the greater Boston area had any money. We were dealing with the oil crisis, global, and she was buying, global inflation. She was buying 20-unit apartment buildings in the Boston area for $80,000 cash, and so, remember, she still sold them at like a 500% net gain in profits. So she was very savvy, and she was never a stock market person. She only liked real estate, but even she, uh, and my grandfather, they always bought gold. And like I said, I believe I told Luke this story. I don't remember what year it was. I was a little kid, so I'm thinking it was early 1980s. Uh, I think she bought a lot of gold when it was $500. I don't recall when that was, but I know it was before 1985, and that staked her in the condos she bought in the east coast of Florida in the early 90s. Again, recession time in the United States, 1991, right around the uh, first Iraq war, invasion of Kuwait. Nobody had any money to buy coastal property in Florida in the United States, not even pensioners like her, but she liquidated gold at a pretty good time. And I don't think she paid more than $90,000 for a two-bedroom, two-bath condo in the West Palm Beach area. And everything she bought, because now you know where I get it from. She was a saltwater beach lover. Everything, friends, she bought was not walking distance to the ocean, not across the street. She was literally on the Atlantic Ocean. All her property in New Hampshire and Massachusetts was on the Atlantic Ocean. All her property in Florida was on the Atlantic Ocean. The woman had beach sand for a front yard her entire life. And she bought that in large part with gold. Yeah, well, liquidating gold. So something to think about. All right, Jody, you had a couple good questions. Go ahead.
Oh, hi, Gads. Yeah, thanks for the space. I really did enjoy it. I did a bit of research on this company. They have a very good reputation, and I really love the strategic um, exploration goals that they had. So they're concentrating on um, low regulation states. They're using state land instead of federal land. I really like that because these days regulation just holds up so much. Being a Canadian, you can understand. Back to gold, though. I mean, gold is always, you're talking about your grandmother. So my grandmother was born in 26, grew up during the Great Depression, and she was one of the most frugal women. She could squeeze $100 out of a dime. I swear to God. Never threw anything away, used everything. I still have some of the flour sack tea towels she used to make. I kid you not. When we were young in my day in the early 70s, a birth gift was usually a piece of gold. And my grandparents bought me and my sister a little 1 ounce gold bar when we were born. And it was given to me when I was an adult by my mother. And then my grandmother said, never sell it. Never, never sell it. She says, if you have nothing left, it will take care of you. She was right. So they bought this in 1972 uh, it was about $44. So that would equate to about $337 today. So the spot price on gold today is $4,500. So that's like a 1,300 and 3,500% return on that little, you know, gold bar that was bought when I was a baby. Um, and I agree with Arthur in that 10 to 15 to 20% is a really good um, percentage of your portfolio to keep in gold. It's always been considered safe. And as for the comparing it with crypto or Bitcoin, it's tangible for people who are very uncomfortable with the intangibility of crypto and the unregulated market, therefore the higher risk. It's always, gold is always something that's been safe. It's always been that way in my life, and it always appreciates. So really great space today. Really enjoyed it. Like the company, and yeah, thanks for doing that. Do it again.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, and I appreciate it. The credit goes to Luke and Terry, who was her ex handles Lioness. She works for them too. I'm really happy they reached out to me. So it's hard to believe on one of my rants about the anti-tariff people that she thought enough of me to say, "Hey, would you like to host my boss?" And a little bit about gold, and I'm like, "Yeah, hell yeah!" I mean, that's great. I'd like to do more of it, guys, eventually. Now that the election's over, I would really just prefer to talk about the economy and sports, to be honest with you. But I say one thing and I do the opposite. So you know how that goes. Thank you. Thanks for your questions, Jody, too. Okay, Susie, what's up?
Well, you'll love this. My husband got the gold bug years ago when the kids were really young. We ended up, a lot of our family vacations was dragging these kids to in our RV with, you know, towing a trailer with gold equipment and whatnot, like gold panning and dredging and sluices and all of that. And we'd go gold panning in the middle of nowhere. It was it was great fun. And the kids, I don't know how much they enjoyed it. One of them got really good at gold panning, but it was a way to kind of get the kids out into nature in the middle of nowhere. And I'm currently wearing a couple of gold nuggets that we came across. So good fun.
That's great. Yeah, I do. I'm a
I know.
big advocate of that. Like, especially like for your children and stuff like that. If you don't believe in banks and you don't believe in the market, physical gold is always good to have in a safe location where you can liquidate it. Um, I remember once my father told me, like, when he was doing not a huge job, it was like maybe a $13,000 job that he was there all summer because it was so off and on. But it was a guy he became friendly with because they were both big fishermen, so they had that common ground. And he told me that he ended up taking a little less money because it was a time and material job. That the guy was had traveled. He was like in international business and stuff like that. So he had gold Krugerrands, which are gold coins. I think they're South African, the Krugerrand, and whatever the equivalent of his cost was, like $10,000 or $13,000. He got paid in gold because the guy offered, to keep the government out of it. Gentleman's agreement on a job. I mean, I've done it for silver on smaller jobs from a guy that had a lot of silver rounds. Um, that's something to think about too. It's what people want to talk about. It's commerce, right? People want to get back to that. Maybe some people don't want an invoice for your work from QuickBooks. Maybe they want to pay you in some other asset. I'm not against that. I can get away with it because I'm self-employed, but I don't know, if you could do that otherwise. But something to think about. We talk about trading all the time. Trading my skills for metal, I have no problem with that. If I could do it, I don't have a problem with that at all. So if you do have gold or silver and you got a contractor working on your house, friends, there you go. Maybe you could talk him down on the price. Something to think about. Just messing around. Yeah, Arthur.
Yeah, just getting back to and looking at gold as a store of wealth or protection of your purchasing power. And we just got inflationary data. I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, and while it looks like some prices are moderating, you have to also sort of think about it in terms of your day-to-day life. I chuckled when I saw that food prices were lower year over year, and one has to take a very skeptical view, political beliefs aside, at just how they calculate CPI, and while it is moderating, we've lost about 25% of our purchasing power in the last 5 years, and we don't get that back, right? That's not the way a fiat system works. So when you look at the Federal Reserve, who have been touting a 2% inflation target for, I would say, the last decade, it's relatively new, right? They want some inflation, but not too much. We can see where they totally lost control, right? 3 years ago, just prior to the war erupting in Russia, Ukraine, and that was after 15 years of keeping interest rates artificially low, right, for too long. Now, even at a 2% target, right? If you divide 2% into 72, you get 36 years. So at 2% inflation, prices are going to double in 36 years. So, I would submit that we're not going back to 2%. I'm a bit skeptical that we're going to head back there. I think inflation will remain elevated for some time. History tells us that, right? When inflation is unleashed, it doesn't go, quietly back into the bottle. So we're 2-3 years into it. Precious metals, again, my concern, right, is that we have a lot of new people in the space that are just gonna, sort of get involved and potentially see a big correction and then abandon ship. And that's why I talked earlier about allocating a fixed amount to your portfolio, whatever that is, right? You decide. And what I've done over the years, and I've been at this for well over a decade, buying gold, silver, and to a lesser degree platinum. I do take physical possession. I say that. I mean, I don't store it in my home in a safe. I have it in a safety deposit box. But when that percentage of my wealth, as it had recently, jumped above 20%, what I did is I sold a bit, but I also reduced my contribution because I wanted to essentially allocate to other areas of my portfolio and reduce the weighting, right? So my point is this: if you don't have a plan, if you don't allocate a percentage, you unless you're superhuman, when we hit these points where prices go parabolic, or the flip side to that is if gold starts to really tank, most people are not going to be able to counter their emotions, right, and their psychological biases. So that's where a plan, right, with a target weighting will act as an anchor, and might be able to help. And of course, none of this is advice. I'm just sharing my own experiences with the group, and that's what sort of kept me contributing to my gold and silver over many years, where the price went nowhere. In fact, really, where the price was falling for a good part of that decade. Right? It's really within the last few years that gold has asserted itself and has outperformed. And if you looked at gold a couple of years ago versus, say, the S&P 500 or other asset classes over, say, a 5 to 10 year period, the return wasn't that impressive. And so again, it's just it works for me. I use it as an anchor or a target, and it helps me manage the emotional aspect of investing. So hopefully that's helpful.
No, it is. And what's based on what you just said, Arthur, what's Warren Buffett's famous saying? If you can't buy a stock or buy gold or buy a commodity and be willing to accept a 50% reduction financially or emotionally, don't do it. Right? That's a lot of these things are patience. Now, are like with any investment, some people are not wired that way, and that's what I've noticed, Arthur. Like April is the perfect example, the month of April, and I think a lot of it was Dave Portnoy having his meltdown over losing $8 million on Liberation Day. When you get these the problem is, I think a lot of what people who are new to investing, whether it's gold, crypto, whatever, stocks, they get introduced via these day traders, like the GameStop kid with the bandana, and you know what I'm saying? Like these meme stock and meme coin YouTube personalities or social media influencers that are always trying to sell a project to somebody. that's a huge problem for newbies to whatever market you're in. You know, um, is you see, Dave Portnoy have a meltdown over losing 8 million, and trust me, he's up again. I'm sure he is, but people get worried. People are not patient. People are worried about losing money, and another reason why gold is very important, because it's if you are risk adverse, or let's just talk like adults, if you are scared of the concept of losing even 20% of your investment, I would say gold, or gold mining stocks, or even in this, I'd say short term, gold ETFs, and I'll explain what those are in a minute. That might be your jam, friends. With Arthur, it sounds like you wanted to pop back in.
Well, no, I just, again, a lot of this chatter is a result of 15 years of free money, right? And that's one of the reasons why precious metals are running. That jig is up, and you always have to consider the source, right? So Dave Portnoy, I mean, this is gambling, right? What he's doing, I mean, he's affiliated with a publicly traded gambling company, right? And I mean, he's on, besides raiding pizza and the other shenanigans he gets up to. I mean, it's basically about gambling. And so, what I articulated, what you articulated, are the furthest things away from gambling, right? This is making, buying an asset class that's been around for thousands of years, that's scarce, that is recognized globally, right? And you look at what's happening. I mean, one of the reasons why gold is running the way that it is because economies like Russia, China, the top countries in the Middle East are basically like buying in size, and they want the physical gold, right? They're having the physical gold delivered. Back several weeks ago, there were several major U.S. banks that were doing the same thing. So, we have to, I think, try to take a step back and consider the source, right? Who is the source of this advice or this communication, right? And as gold continues its outperformance, the reality is there will be a lot of new investors that will come into the trade, just like AI stocks, right? Just like real estate. Could it be a short-term bubble? Yeah, well, it absolutely could be. But again, it doesn't mean that it's a long-term sell, right? Or it doesn't work. It's just, if you're new, I guess my point is, if you're new to the trade, um, I would, and I had X amount of dollars to invest, I would probably scale it in 3 or 4 tranches, as opposed to putting it all in at once. And again, it depends on your time horizon, right? That said, overbought assets like gold, and gold is very overbought here. Doesn't mean it's not a good investment long term, but overbought assets in the short term, they can become even more overbought, right? The animal spirits could push gold up another 10 or 20%. So, I run the risk of somebody saying, "Hey, I heard you speak the other day and you were discouraging people from piling in." Well, I am. I mean, if you don't own any gold here, or gold stocks outside of royalty companies have not had major moves. But, I'm always of the opinion that if you're going to invest a chunk of money, it's not a bad idea, especially after a big move higher, to break it down into a few tranches, as opposed to investing all at once.
Now, Arthur, I don't have
That's,
my laptop open right now. I don't have any charts in front of me, but is it just me, or was gold, like, I want to say, from just like the whole pandemic up until like 20, wasn't it like stuck between 18 and 1900 USD an ounce, if memory
yeah,
serves,
yeah,
for like 3
yeah.
years?
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so gold, you know, gold, when real rates are negative, right? So keep in mind, as low as inflation was, I mean, rates were actually below inflation, right? Keep in mind, back in there was about a 4 or 5 year period just prior to COVID where countries like Germany, Switzerland, the UK to a lesser extent, and I think Sweden could borrow money at negative rates. So in that kind of an environment, gold tends to underperform. You know, if you look at the last 3 years, you know, gold is considered a hedge against inflation. Well, what have we had over the last 3 years? We've had a lot more inflation and, you know, concerns that it could go higher. So that's, you know, again, what you'll find is after periods of trading sideways, right? Like basically going nowhere, 3, 5, 10 years, when an asset class, whatever asset class it is, whether it's real estate or stocks or precious metals, when they break out, right, when they start to move, the moves can be quite explosive. It's think of it as if you looked at that chart of whatever it is that trades in a very narrow range, think about that like a garden hose, right? That gets plugged, and then there's all that pressure there that's building. And so while that asset class is trading sideways over many years or months or quarters, when it ultimately breaks out, the move is often very, very powerful. And that's what you're seeing. You have to look at it at a much longer term. I mean, most people on social media, most people on FinTwit, long term is like 1 or 2 days. Like it's crazy. I'm in and out of investing rooms,
Yes.
and it's all about, you know, where something is trading this afternoon versus the morning. So, you know, that's not a field that I play on. That's not a field that my clients are playing on. If you want to see, you know, look at a long-term chart of gold, look at a chart over a decade or 20 years. And what you'll see is periods of, you know, 3, 4, 5, 7 years, 10 years, where it essentially goes nowhere. But when it goes, right, when it breaks out, it's incredibly explosive.
And that's
And
why I bought so
yeah,
much of it, Arthur. Well, mostly silver, but I really didn't even open a trading app in 2020 to 2021. I was just buying physical silver and mostly silver, physical silver and gold, really out of boredom, because
yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't, you know, who, I mean, and think about it. Rewind to August of 2020. I mean, nobody, the markets were there was so much uncertainty, um, with everything, you know. Uh, People like me who are just regular people, I don't think they were really paying attention to the market. It just was too volatile. You remember this is when people were still driving around with masks on, in urban areas, etc. So yeah, I mean, that people, because I got a question in DM, you know, why did you start buying it? Like, they think it was random. That I said no, it was out of boredom. I wanted to put my money somewhere, and you know, the pandemic, it was, like I said, a lot of boredom, and not, you know, the markets were. I just didn't want to, like you said, play in that field, right?
yeah. It's you know, and now, did you guys were you discussing? Again, I sorry, I came on later.
It's okay.
Did you talk about buying, like how individuals can? It's a bit easier for individuals to get involved now at places like Costco, for example.
No, not really. We talked about his projects, and
Okay.
really the mining, a macro look at the mining industry right now. So for those of you just coming in, and Arthur, you too, when you reopen the space again, when I closed it, the first hour is just my one-on-one with Luke. And then this second hour, which I'm going to conclude shortly, is just like this open discussion. So, but it was mostly about his projects, Arthur, because he's got really a lot of good bandwidth right now because of the states their projects are in: Wyoming, Idaho, and Nevada, probably the three most business friendly states for mining companies in the country. So he's like he's like first and goal. He's got everything, all his resources there as contractors, and they're ready to begin their big project in Cheyenne, Wyoming at the end of this month. So we focused on like the macro view of mining, and how we did talk about how China and Russia were, their central banks were buying up a lot of gold as a hedge, but not so much on an individual level. No, on a regular person level, that's what we're talking about now. But I didn't ask him those questions specifically.
Yeah, yeah. I'm more curious as to, I mean, obviously, central banks and governments wouldn't be too interested in promoting this, but when we went through what we went through with COVID, and again, I'm up in Canada, so in the Greater Toronto area, so things are about as bad as they could possibly be from a personal freedom standpoint. People who donated to a peaceful protest had their bank accounts frozen, and heck, as a donor, my personal information, I was doxxed because the donor list was hacked, et cetera, et cetera. So, one of the things that I was looking to do in my community and sort of getting outside of the city was, striking up relationships with local farmers, those that raise, livestock, as well as, fruits and vegetables. Quite an amazing fruit belt up in my neck of the woods here. So, one of the questions that I asked, and many of these or Amish, was, look, are you guys, can we barter? Would you accept, gold and silver as payment, that sort of thing? And they were very open to it. And so, again, a lot of my thinking changed throughout COVID because of what I saw from, well, all levels of government, right? I mean, the federal government empowered provinces, and the provinces empowered their regional unelected public health officials, who became essentially local dictators. And so, my thinking changed immensely. And it was actually during COVID. I never used to take physical possession of my gold, silver, platinum. I would store it through. It's actually a storage company, which is a division of Brinks. But I got really spooked and decided to just get everything delivered, and I now hold it in a safety deposit box. I don't want a big safe in my house, and so that was the decision that I made. So, I'd like to learn, and what I'm trying to do locally is find people that would be open. You had talked about it earlier, offering your skills, right, and your services for gold or silver. And so, that's what I took the time to do, was get into my community outside of my city, and get into more rural areas, and strike up relationships with. So I have a farmer that supplies me with eggs. I have someone who raises cattle, who supplies my brother and I with beef. Um, you know, Grass fed. There's another gentleman who raises Berkshire pigs, organically raised. So that's what I took the time to do, and I'm so grateful that I did it. Met some fabulous people in my community that are just salt of the earth types with shared values. And I've established Sorry, I just had a call coming in. So anyway, I just thought I would share that as well. You know, back, I believe it was right around the Second World War, you know, people who owned physical gold had it confiscated, right, by the government. So, you know, look, we've seen lots of crazy stuff happening with, I guess, depending on where you live, with safety deposit boxes. And, you know, if I believe there's a few cases in California where, you know, people's assets were confiscated, as part of an arrest, right, before they even went to trial. So anything's possible, but I'm just trying to do what I can to try to put myself and my family in a better position, based on what we saw here over the last 3 to 5 years. Thanks.
Thank you, Arthur. Yeah, same deal. Yeah, I think the word we're looking for is barter, and that's something I'm open to. If you're an entrepreneur or a business owner in here, and you have, like I said, I will do it with, you know, I tend to have very affluent clients, so that are, you know, in many cases, world travelers or business people where they have access to that. I've done it on labor. I haven't done it on materials, but I absolutely will even make like a 10% reduction in labor if labor cost on a job. If you know, I'll pay my guys their check, but I'll take as project manager, as general contractor, I'll absolutely take my labor payment in gold or silver at a reduced rate, not materials though. Um, but something to think about, guys. Like we want to change the global economy. We want to change our little corner of the universe. That's how you do it. And if you're in a position to do it, it's an investment, you know. Um, some people are in a position, you know, you don't necessarily need a check for $5,000 for services rendered that you're going to get taxed on. Maybe your bills are paid and you're in a position to focus on your investment. And if that comes via, you know, gold or silver, I would, you know, again, never financial advice. Just I'm telling you what I've done and what I'll do again. Something to think about anyway. So you guys have a wonderful day. I've got to I'm going to close this down. Again, if you're just popping in, the first hour was the interview with Luke Norman. His associate there who hooked us up, Terry. She's DM me that he wants to do it again, which is great. I think this is a good thing to track. So if you're interested, again, U.S. Gold Corp, USAU, take a look. They're trading at about $10 a share, so it's easy to get in the ground floor. It wasn't financial advice. Full disclosure, I was a shareholder. I was paid nothing. I wanted nothing other than Luke's time today. I don't roll like that, and I'm happy to invest my money in his company because I think, you know, again, personally, I think it's a good investment. That's up to you if you think it's a good investment. I hope you guys get something out of this. I learned a lot, and if you're not learning, guys, you're not living, and that could be with anything. So investments is part of that as well. If you're not learning, you're not living, right? Your biggest teacher in life will be failure, right? A lot of people don't want to hear that, but I'm happy to, because I've lived it. I can tell you, I've learned the most from when I've made mistakes. That includes with investments. So that being said, given the fact that I've made money and lost money and broken even on ventures in my life, when it comes to the stock market, like I said, gold, gold mining, gold ETFs, etc. They've worked for me, you know, and I'm hardly the only person that can say that. So you guys have a wonderful day. Thanks for all your comments. Thanks for all your questions. And we will talk again soon. You guys enjoy.
First off, let me convey to my family, friends, and supporters that now is not the time to gloat. We must remember that most of our left-leaning friends are good people who want the same things in life as we do, but simply think differently on how to get there. It is now time to be the bigger man, to extend an olive branch and unite all reasonable people of this great nation. God has blessed America, and together with President Trump, we will make America great